Now, the Chief Director of International Climate Change Relations and Negotiations at the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment, Maesela Kekana, joins us now via Zoom for a little bit more. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. Welcome to the programme.
Thank you, Peter.
So those words from the Minister that those that cause the majority of the problem should step forward and provide a lot of the solutions to the problem. They've been making promises for, I would even say, decades now. Where are we in terms of movement? Because every COP we have these announcements that are made and people clap and they seem to feel like progress is being made. Are we making progress in terms of just transition, financial support, all of those kinds of things?
If you just rewind and look at what the scientists have been telling us, I think the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change told us that we need to put forward the commitments for pre-2020 of minus 40%, but the industrialized countries did not meet that target. Again, they themselves promised in Copenhagen in 2009 that they will deliver $100 billion US dollars per year from 2020 onwards. They haven't delivered on that. However, that as we
Hello, Mr. Kekana, are you still there? We'd lost you for...
Yes, I'm here. I hope you can...
We'd lost you for a few seconds.
Yes. There. Okay, yes. The short answer is that they have not met their targets. But is there progress? Yes, there is progress because now one of the things that we agreed to in the Paris Agreement is that all of us will now have to make a contribution, both the industrialized and developing countries. And all of us have generated these plans, national plans called the nationally determined contributions that we put forward. And when you aggregate them, you can see exactly where we are and what is required by science and the gap that exists. Hence, last year in Glasgow, we put forward certain things such as the mitigation work program to see how can we collectively close that particular gap in terms of mitigation. And on the financing, you'd recall that last year in Glasgow, South Africa also, together with a few partners, made an announcement that they will support our just transition. And of course, work has been going on throughout the years. But what we've also seen is that other countries are now putting their just transitions together. So in one way, you can see that there is progress. But of course, commitments from developed to developing countries have not been met.
All right, so COVID-19 has been used by some countries as a cover because it disrupted things. But I suppose what we can do is look just before COVID-19, see the pattern of behavior. And I wonder if COVID-19 is being used as a scapegoat to not move as quickly as one should.
No, not necessarily. In fact, when COVID hit, climate change did not stop. It continued. The scapegoat that we are getting these days is about the war, the war in Russia, Ukraine war. Yes, and that's where we started to see a lot of industrialized countries going back to using a lot of fossil fuels. Before that, they had made significant progress, and but since the war, we've seen a lot of backtracking on their part. Of course, they justify that that is temporary on one hand, and that they are putting new plans that would put them back on track to meet the commitments that they made through their plans and the NDCs.
The minister spoke about countries in the world that contributed the most to the carbon footprint, and how we in the developing world often are the biggest victims of that activity. But I put it to you that South Africa actually is one of those contributors, huge contributors. So in many ways, we need to move forward much faster than our brothers and sisters across the continent. Are we making enough strides? Because we hear conversations about coal being very much what we're going to be doing for some time to come still.
Well, I wouldn't agree that South Africa is a huge contributor. You know, that's a little bit of a strong statement. But if you just compare within the continent, yes, we are a major player when it comes to that. But globally, we contribute less than 1% of total global emissions. And historically, we contributed even less than that. The issue is, as we agreed in the Paris Agreement, that we all need to make a contribution. This is what South Africa is committed to. We put forward a very ambitious plan last year, the NDC. Our NDC is very robust, it's very ambitious. And if you now go back and look at where we are in terms of reducing emissions, we in the department have a monitoring and evaluation system where we track emissions. And I can tell you that according to the data that we have, we are on track to achieve our 2025 goal. We have achieved the previous goal, the 2020 goal. So clearly, we are doing something right when it comes to reducing emissions.
So, COP27, what do we need to get out of COP27?
South Africa is part of the Africa Group, so we negotiate as part of the Africa. And from the Africa perspective, the first thing on the agenda that we want as an outcome, a positive outcome during COP27, is the financing for the adaptation. In your intro, you clearly indicated the impacts that we are suffering in the continent and the adaptation that we need to do. But to do that, you need some finance. So we hope to see new pledges to the adaptation fund. We also want to see progress on the promise from Glasgow, from the previous COP, that financing for adaptation would double by 2025. But we also want to see progress in terms of parity of financing for mitigation and adaptation. So that is number one. The second point is that we want to see delivery on finance in general, particularly the issue of the promised 100 billion. This is just for trust building. The 100 billion is not really the figure that is required by developing countries or Africa. to do its own climate action. It's far much more than that. The 100 billion is not based on our needs. It was just something that was offered. So we want to see at least the delivery of that for trust building. But the biggest issue that has been talked all over the globe is the financing for the loss and damages due to climate change. And loss and damage really is when you can no longer adapt and you move into permanent losses and damages because of climate change, say because of slow onset events such as drought or flooding due to extreme weather events. So for those sort of things, we currently don't have a financing arrangement for that. So loss and financing arrangements for loss and damage is big on the agenda for this COP. So we want to see a positive outcome there. But last year we also agreed that besides the financing, we also need to look at the technical aspect. And we put together this body called the Santiago Network for Loss and Damage. So we need to operationalize that. We need to put its secretariat together so that we can have a body that provided technical expertise when it comes to quantifying losses and damages. And on the other hand, we make financial arrangements to fund that. So those three are big, but also from the continent perspective, and this is just particularly for the continent, we want a recognition of our special needs and circumstances as the continent. This issue appears in the convention, the United Nations Convention on Climate Change. However, it was lost when we were drafting the Paris Agreement, so we want it back. We've been negotiating this issue since Paris, and we think that Egypt is the right place to deliver these special needs and circumstances of Africa. We emit very little, but we are highly impacted, and we have a low capacity to adapt. Therefore, we believe that the continent's special circumstance needs to be recognized, and that is also a priority for all of us.
And that's where we'll leave it. We wish you the best of luck and getting the prizes that we're looking for at COP27. But I look forward to a number of conversations with you before and after. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that's the Chief Director of International Climate Change Relations and Negotiations at the Department of Forestry Fisheries and the Environment, Maesela Kekana, speaking to us ahead of COP27, which is taking place in Egypt next month. And that's a story we'll certainly be carrying for you in the lead up and during as well. All right, stay with us. It's World Polio Day, and we speak to a remarkable person, a sportsman who is a polio survivor. He's going to be telling us a little bit about his story and also Polio Day generally.